just listen to the beat. Yummy like a gummy bear.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
I got Dave.
Oh.
I got Dave Control with me. We're gonna be doing a show here today. How you doing, Dave?
That's me. I'm that guy. How are you doing? I'm good.
We're looking good. All right.
Just got my energy drink, so I'm great.
Yeah, I just made a double espresso, and then I'll wash that down with an energy drink. Let's go.
Who needs sleep? Am I right?
No, we got Zelda.
Oh yeah. I finally last night I was like, should I play Zelda? No, I don't want to look like crap this morning. So I keep on like intending to stop playing at midnight, and then I'll go until 2 a.m.
Yep, that's definitely the life I'm living. Oh man, that explains it. My makeup game got erased. Test. There we go. Do 6. I'll just turn myself down.
Hello,
then...
Grant and Matt. I don't know. Can they hear us already?
Yes, they can hear us.
Oh,
they should be able to.
I didn't know that. All right.
Sorry, yeah, mic check. Mic check with the live mic check is what I meant to say.
Yeah, when
my
you
bad.
said mic check, I didn't know it was a live mic check.
Yeah,
so.
my bad. Oh, well, yeah, listen,
Right,
all those hateful things you said, I bleeped those out. Don't worry about that. Okay.
Where can I find out how Sonic saves Sega? Hey.
Okay. Let's see. All right, I think we are looking pretty good. I am going to... You know what? We're going to fade to black. We're going to get started, everybody. See you in a second.
Yummy like a gummy bear.
It's the internet. You're busy. Let's do this for May 19th, 2023. For the next hour or so, let me help you sort through the world of gaming on Game Mess Mornings Live with me, Jeff Grubb. Today, ring the bell because we have an update from Big Jimbo Ryan. But first, please join me in welcoming today's co-host of Game Mess Mornings. It's David Klein, Dave Control. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm happy to have you. Glad we could do the show together, talk about some video game news. Yeah, I haven't seen you in weeks, and I'm missing you, but I think I'm going to see you here again pretty soon. I'm looking forward to that as well.
Yeah, I went from nothing to a lot. Yeah, because
Yes.
last was DreamHack, which we did together, and now Summer Game Fest coming up.
Yep, looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm just happy I got sleep last night. I've been playing a lot of Tears of the Kingdom like everybody else, so you know, it's like every time I look at the clock, I'm like, okay, I'm going to bed tonight. It's going to be 11 p.m. It's going to be 12 a.m. I'm going to do it okay. And then I look at the clock again, and it's like 2 a.m. or 3 a.m.
Yep,
so.
That's been my entire week as well. And it's busy, so like we are planning Summer Game Fest stuff, a million other things, and every chance I get, I'm like, all right, I got some stuff out of the way. I'm gonna play a little bit of Zelda, and that always turns into a lot of Zelda. But it's a good game. It turns out it's a good game. The actual worst part is it's not the only good game. There are a ton of other games happening very soon. and they're taking up
I'd
a lot of
actually
time as
just
well.
started finally playing Resident Evil 4 Remake.
Oh,
I just
okay,
started
yeah.
playing it finally, and I was about like 3/4 of the way through the castle when Tears of the Kingdom came out, and I was just like, yeah, I'm not finishing that for a while.
Yeah,
It's not happening.
I actually stopped playing it halfway through, and I started playing it like right away. There was other stuff happening. I don't know. I'm at a certain point, I'm like, oh yeah, it's Resident Evil 4. I get it. I know a lot of
Yeah, I
people
mean-
really like it a lot more than they even like the original, but for me, it's just like, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I kind of honestly had the same reaction. I was like, I played RE4 1 multiple times. It's the same game mostly. I mean, they changed things up, but
Of course.
also I made the mistake of it tells you in the beginning of the game if you played RE4, you should play on hardcore mode. So I was like, oh, okay, well I played RE4 1, I'll play in hardcore mode. And
Yeah.
I as much as I love the Souls games, I love challenging games, but I like it when that's the difficulty that's intended. So I've been playing hardcore. I'm like, this was not. I thought it was going to be normal mode in a way. So
Yeah, what do you think
bad.
that is? What is it when it's like the intended thing? It almost feels like you're in sort of an agreement with the developer, right? Like you're having a conversation, whereas having the sliding scale difficulty thing and then choosing the difficult one feels way different. Why do you think that is?
It's because, I mean, to me, the way, at least, so I've actually, just as a side note, I've started working on programming my own game over the past 6
Ooh,
months.
Cool.
And I can say, like, doing that, there's a way that you kind of like hope players play the game, that you're kind of designing things around. And especially with shooting games and FPS games, enemies start to become bullet sponges. The later and later you get in, the harder it gets. And some people definitely enjoy that, but I mean, there's probably a way that you intend for it to be where they're not such bullet sponges. You have a certain amount of health, and that you intend it to be that way for the level of play that you're expecting players to be, or the way that you're designing challenges around the player. Even from like the types of enemies who come out, or how hard the enemies are, where they're placed in the level. Like those sorts of things are all factored in when you're designing something. It's not just levers that you're tweaking. Yeah. So when you like just add, and I think RE4 does a good job in changing enemy placement too, but you know, it's not just as simple as like turning up and bumping up those values. Like, yes, that makes the game harder, but it doesn't necessarily make it more fun, in my opinion. So
yeah. I get. I think you're exactly right. It's like there's something about it when it's like it feels so meticulously crafted to be a certain way that it does feel like, oh, okay, I need to try to understand the intention here. And I think that goes out of the window. That desire to understand the intention of the developer goes out the window pretty fast. But it's a good motivator out of the gate, which is like the hump that we're talking about, like actually starting the game and like choosing a difficulty level. But yeah, that intention is always fun to try to parse at that first step. Dave, I need help. The chat is bullying me. They're making fun of my tiny cup. They are making fun of my church Sunday clothes and my beautiful coif. I don't know what to do about these kids. They're all very cruel. It's elementary school all over again.
Why are you wearing so? Why are you look so nice?
No, listen, I got to go back to just being Jeff Scrub. That's what I need to embrace. That's been the key this entire time.
You know what it is, Grub? You're owning your age at this point.
That's right.
Whereas
Very
I'm
daddy.
like, I'm 36. I'm dressing like I'm 18. So I mean, like,
it'll just happen. It'll happen to you. It'll just like you wake up one day and be like, all right, put on the Steely Dan. Let me go get the 7-inch inseam shorts. Let's fucking go. All right. We have a mess to get into, but before we do, let's explain what we do here. Most weekdays, I, Jeff Grubb, will help piece your gaming life back together. That includes breaking news and maybe even some of our own original reporting. For all these topics, I'll get the input of a bona fide expert who will make me look smart. If you are watching live on Twitch, welcome. You can always listen to the show later on podcast feeds by searching for Game Mess Mornings or find the RSS on GiantBomb.com. You can also catch the show later with chapters and timestamps on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. Okay.
Hello, everyone. Also, R Wolves mentioned my show, How Sonic Saves Sega. Please watch it. Anyways,
Yes.
just thank you and hi to everybody.
Watch Dave Control. All right. We have a lot to get into, so let's start the morning mess with Jimbo Ryan talks with Famitsu about Spider-Man 2, PSVR 2, and more. There's a lot of little tidbits in here. We'll get to all of them. He does start by talking to Famitsu, a Japanese video gaming publication, about the importance of the Japanese video game market. And we'll see if you know what, Dave, I'll read it and we'll see if we buy it. He says the Japanese market has been and will continue to be one of the most important markets. The reason for this is, of course, that the Japanese market is the second largest in the world. But more important than simple statistics is that Japan is the birthplace of PlayStation. In addition, there are many employees in Japan, and the fact that SIE is made possible by their activities is also a major point that emphasizes the Japanese market. Also, Japan is an integral part of the PlayStation culture and is one of the central countries So I think it is very special and important to be able to transmit in Japan within the PlayStation brand. There's another reason why the Japanese market is so important. That's because many of the famous titles were born of Japan. There are many titles that have been shining on our platform for nearly 30 years. Titles like Final Fantasy, Monster Hunter, Tekken, to name a few. But there are countless other masterpieces developed by Japanese developers and released by publishers. SIE has a long history of relationships with developers and publishers, so the Japanese market is extremely important in that sense as well. Dave, I'll tell you what I notice about the games he listed there. None of them are PlayStation games. They are third-party games. And I think that's reflected in Sony's strategy, which is not necessarily to be making their big budget games in Japan anymore. So do you buy this from Jim?
I mean, yeah, I totally agree with you. It sounds like PR fluff. It's Famitsu. It's the main Japanese magazine, obviously. I think one interesting thing, while you're talking, I looked this up because I was curious. Apparently, the original Spider-Man, the PS4 one that came out in 2018, apparently it actually sold well in Japan for the Japanese market.
Yeah, I think so.
So I didn't realize that. So I was curious. So, that's with that fact in mind, it does sound like, they probably do want to appeal to the Japanese market because the first one did well. So, they probably want to make sure that market's aware, like, hey, we are thinking of you because we want to sell those extra 100,000 plus copies. So, yeah, I could get it for this game at least.
Yeah, and it's Ghost of Tsushima sold really well. He talks about how in this interview he mentions it sold more than 1 million copies in Japan, and that is very good. And occasionally they can have one of those games that pops off, but even Ghost of Tsushima not made in Japan. So I think he's like, yeah, we see the importance of this region. Obviously, it's our cultural home for the company, for the PlayStation brand. But he did close PlayStation Japan studios, and really the only studios left in Japan now are the Gran Turismo team, Polyphony, right? That's how you say that, Polyphony Digital, and then Team Asobi, which of course Team Asobi does rule, and they're awesome, and I can't wait for the next Astrobot game. I hope it comes out. But in terms of investing in making games in Japan, I don't think that's going to change suddenly, right? They've reached an equilibrium with the way they're going to do things going forward. Do you think that's right? Yeah,
I'd agree with that. Just from a sales perspective alone, you in general compare Japan to other regions. It's completely different, the ballpark that you're reaching. So, yeah, and as you mentioned, closing the Japanese studio, it's not changing.
Yep. Yeah, I think I agree. All right. He says he was also asked about other strategies for Japan, and Ryan says it is to send out games that are highly compatible with the Japanese market. Elden Ring, Resident Evil 4, Monster Hunter Rise, Wild Hearts. Again, none of them from Sony. And those have already been released on PlayStation 5. And then this game was born in Japan and was released in Japan. I think he's talking about Ghost of Tsushima there. It is very encouraging to see hit titles being created in Japan. And I am very grateful that there are many more titles scheduled to be released in addition to these titles. Most recently, we have Final Fantasy 16 and Street Fighter 6 on the horizon, both of which will be huge and important launches for the world, but Japanese game fans will have a particularly high affinity for them. I think it will be a special launch. If they aren't going to be making their own games in Japan for the most part, they are still investing a lot of money because they have spent a lot of money to ensure console exclusivity or to keep it off Xbox for something like Final Fantasy 16. I think they do have something of a co-marketing deal for Street Fighter 6. So they're still making bets. They're just not going whole hog on those bets, right?
Yeah, to what you were saying too with Final Fantasy 16 at being exclusive. Even not Elden Ring, but even say like Bloodborne, and Demon's Souls. They have invested in From Software and other specifically Japanese publishers, but they're kind of safer bets at this point. So, yeah, again, as I mentioned at first, a lot of it just feels like PR fluff in a way where it's like, we're talking to Famitsu. We care about you guys because we're talking to you, Famitsu. But
I think that's, I also, that clearly comes through in what he's saying a lot. It's, it is hard to believe that they suddenly are going to care about Japan in some major new way. I think they still care about Japan, but they left Japan in terms of their headquarters and they moved it to Los Angeles or Santa Monica and stuff. And then the sort of center of power within Sony Interactive Entertainment is in Europe now with Herman Holst and Jim Ryan It's this company has shifted away from Japan in some major ways. That doesn't mean they've abandoned it or that they're not going to use their history in Japan to leverage more success. But it just means it's clear that that is something that has waned instead of growing over the years. In terms of Spider-Man 2, the planned release for 2023, they asked Jim Ryan to talk about the game a little bit. He says, "I'm sure Marvel Spider-Man 2 will be very exciting, be a very exciting launch because Marvel Spider-Man released on PS4 is a touchstone. The title was a huge success on the PS4 and was enjoyed by millions of users. The sequel, Marvel Spider-Man 2, is being developed exclusively for PS5, so the developers have made no compromises. We asked them to focus on maximizing the functions of the PS5 and creating the best works. As a result, we've received feedback from game fans that it looks like they'll be able to enjoy really beautiful visuals and a wonderful experience." Do you think that Spider-Man 2 is going to feel like the first real next-gen game, or maybe the next big next-gen game that feels like a step forward?
That's a good question. I'm kind of looking at my catalog right now. That's what I was glancing back at. I feel Demon Souls actually felt, visually speaking, and that
Definitely.
felt like a big, like, oh my god, this game is beautiful type of next gen level, or I guess current gen at this point, right?
Yep. New gen. I still think it's new. It's not next, but it's newish.
It's funny because I feel like a lot of times I still catch myself saying that about the PS5 when it's been out for a while now.
It's not really our fault though. It's exactly this: is that they were putting these games out on both God of War Ragnarok, big new game.
Yeah.
That's a PS4 game as well. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just we're straddling both sides, so it still feels like next gen to a certain extent. And I agree with you. Demon Souls looked amazing. I think Ratchet and Clank looks really, really good. So these things have happened, but Ratchet and Clank and Demon Souls, those were exclusive, and those felt like next gen games, new gen games. I think Spider-Man 2 is going to be that at least, but I'm hoping it's even more of a step further because we are years in. It's from one of their best studios. It is their best-selling game series now. So I hope they've invested everything into it, and that seems to be what he's suggesting. Do you think it can live up to that hype?
Yeah, I honestly do. That studio's fantastic. Spider-Man was fantastic. Miles Morales, I honestly didn't play it, but I know everyone loved it who did. So I think Spider-Man 2, I have high hopes. It's one of those few developers I actually think will pull it off. And like you said, to the next gen thing, as you pointed out, I didn't really think about it too much until you said it, but you're right. Pretty much every release is multi-platform at this point, unless it's a Switch release, and that's, older gen, like pretty old gen at this point. So, I think it will be. I'm really excited to see what they do with it. The first Spider-Man was so good.
Yes.
And to see what they can do just focusing on this hardware, we can only hope that it's as good as Astro's Playroom.
Yeah, listen, what could possibly be that good? But we'll see. I hope that Spider-Man 2 has speedrunning challenges like Astro's Playroom so that I can hurt myself playing that as well. All right, what do you think about the popularity of PSVR 2 hardware? Let's see if we get anything of substance from Jimmy on this one. Ryan said PSVR 2 has just been launched, so it may be a little early to judge its popularity, but we are happy to see many positive reactions from users and the media. I just listed some of the compatible titles, but more than 40 titles have been released around the launch of PSVR 2. In addition, there are many titles ahead of us in 2023 and beyond. We will continue to push forward so that those who purchase PSVR 2 can enjoy it for a long time, and we can also secure profits. I don't know if I believe either of those last phrases there, that there's going to be a long time of support and that they're going to be able to secure profits. This is a tough thing where he's clearly not running a victory lap because there's probably no victory lap to take on the PSVR 2, something that seems to have come out and fizzled, right?
It's kind of sad to me, honestly. I still don't have VR myself, and PSVR 2 is kind of what I was looking at as like, oh, maybe this will be the jumping in point for me. Maybe this is going to be the one since I have a PS5. It felt pretty good, and I don't know. It just feels like there's really nothing for it. I feel like Capcom's the only company that really makes like big games in a way for PSVR, and even then, they're not fully there sometimes.
Right.
So, it's kind of a shame. I feel like the technology is really cool, but it just, I don't know. I'm not the indicator for everybody, but I feel like from what I've seen and everything, it just hasn't super taken off. And at least it's getting better with every iteration from the technology standpoint, but from the sales standpoint, I feel like the trend's over.
Yeah.
It's like when 3D was big back with the 3DS and 3D TVs and 3D and films. Virtual reality felt like it was going to surpass that because it was genuinely a new experience, and I feel like it sort of had that same 3D effect. But I don't know. How do you feel on that?
I agree. I think it's the trajectory of, and I've said this somewhere else before, but the trajectory of VR feels very similar to the Segway scooter, where it was like it was really promoted big time when it was going to come out. It was called It, and it was going to change everything. And then people did get excited when it first launched, and there were early adopters. And then very quickly, those early adopters sort of dried up, and really who was left was a sort of industry would buy it for them. Like businesses would come in and buy a bunch and use it for like city tours and stuff. And it's like, we saw that with VR. There's a lot of installations and sort of theme park adjacent uses of VR. And now we're like, okay, is it going to swing back and is there going to be more of a demand among home user applications? And I think the PSVR 2 was the right like hardware. It just seems to have been the wrong price for the most part for most people on console, and a real dearth of compelling software, or at least a compelling ongoing software. I think there was some fine stuff at launch. Most of it was ports from other stuff, older games, but that might not matter for someone who's getting a PSVR 2 because you probably haven't played a lot of that stuff before. Even then, though, a lot of those games still weren't very exciting. And then there was questions around like, okay, then what is going to be coming that's next? Is the Astrobot team making a VR game? Are you going to get Half-Life Alyx? And there's been none of that. Yeah, exactly. And so like now we have that showcase next week, and they could announce a whole bunch of games. And they said they're going to have PSVR 2 stuff there. Are you confident that they are going to have enough stuff to maybe get you interested in a VR 2?
No, frankly, no. I'm glad they're supporting it for people who bought it. I hope that they do. I really hope that they do. I'd love to see it happen, but I highly doubt it. Maybe they'll have their killer app. Yes. Beat Saber, in a way, I feel like Beat Saber really helped because that was a game made for VR that feels good for VR. Maybe they'll have a couple more games to show like that, where it's like you need VR to properly experience this. And but for me at the moment, I feel like it's horror games and Beat Saber. Those are the two reasons to have VR. And unless you're into those two specific things, it's like you said, it's like a amusement park rides. Like I have a friend who develops VR stuff, and they make museum exhibits because that's really what works in a way with it.
Yeah.
What, like, are you excited? Do you feel like there's going to be anything they can do?
I really like VR. I use it. I think console VR needs to meet a certain threshold to sort of break the seal on people's interests, where you need to have a lot. Because on PC, I'll get a PC VR headset and be like, well, people are going to just experiment, and there's going to be a lot of wild shit on the internet. And when a project happens that I'm interested in, I'm going to be able to go get the open source version of it, download it, and just mess around with it myself.
Yeah.
And that is, to me, that is where a lot of the excitement is at. Then over on the console closed garden space, it's like, okay, if you are curating an experience for me and I need to be ponying up the cash for both the hardware and then the peripheral, you need to kind of wow me in a way that the PSVR 2 certainly hasn't yet. And I think the skepticism that we're both sharing here is not out of nowhere for a Sony based non-home PlayStation system. We've seen them repeatedly try things that aren't the PlayStation home console, the PSP, the Vita, and and the original PSVR. PSVR got a decent amount of support. They invested a lot in it. The reality has changed, though, where even if they try to do that, there's not as many VR developers out there anymore for them to go out there and even pay that money to. And they've also not really shown, they've not shown so far through this PSVR 2 generation that they're even doing that. There was Horizon that actually looked good to me. I've been thinking for a long time that I felt like rock climbing is a really good I like that a lot. To do. Yeah, to me that felt like a perfect application into VR, is some sort of rock climbing thing, because then you get that perspective of looking down and be like, oh my god, I'm really high up. Yep. So it's cool to see a Horizon. Like, to me, that is the best example of Sony trying to do something. But beyond that, there's not much.
I mean, it's like, as you were mentioning with other peripherals, it's like remember the PlayStation Move, remember the Xbox Kinect, things like that, and they've just all totally fizzled because it's not the main line support. And I think that's ultimately going to be the issue with these sorts of things is unless it has that mass adaptation, it's not going to attract major developers to make games for it.
Definitely not.
And that's just ultimately the issue. It's like, in a way, it's like the Nintendo Wii U. I love the Wii U. I think it had a lot of fantastic first-party games, but because it didn't get that wide mass market adaptation, third-party developers just completely stopped making games for it. They just did not care. And that's the same issue that VR is facing, just across the board, unfortunately.
Yep, and it's if Sony wanted me to have confidence in this thing, regardless of all those factors that you just eloquently listed out, which I agree with all of them, they would say the VR studios that we do have internally beyond Call of the Mountain, the Astrobot team, they are working on something, and the Insomniac, which has done a lot of VR stuff, they are working on something. Personally, I don't think they are, because that would not be a very good use of their talents, their time, and that money. Though that's an opportunity cost. But maybe I'm wrong, and they can say that right at this showcase, and we'll get to the showcase. And if they say that, then I'll be like, you know what, they are investing in it, and we'll just say, okay, that's great. Now they can really prove it. But until then, it's hard not to feel skeptical about the PSVR 2. And I think the way he talks about it in this interview plays into that, because he's not saying he's not promising some bright burning future. He's saying, yeah, we're going to support it. Okay, we'll see.
You know what it is? Sorry, I know we got to move on.
No, keep going. Let's talk about it.
I feel like it's the only way for it to really succeed in a big way is if a company goes all in on it. And it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy right now, where it's not succeeding because companies aren't making games for it, and because companies aren't making games for it, it's not succeeding in selling. I feel like it just has to be a company has to say, we are going to be. The next PlayStation 6 is a VR machine, just like Nintendo does with their systems.
Yeah.
Where like Nintendo, as much as the Wii U failed, they tried to make it so that was the thing. That's what they were putting all their eggs in that basket. And I don't know, unless a company does that, I feel like we just have to hope that it does well on PC, essentially, for these sorts of things. I just don't see it happening for console unless that happens.
Yep. And it's, and Sony makes so much money with the stuff that isn't VR. That's where they're going to keep making their bets, in my opinion. He talked a little bit about PC games, and he's like, yeah, we're going to be proactive about putting more stuff on PC. The interviewer at Famitsu was like, hey, that's great, but can we make sure you keep doing PS5 exclusives? That's what gets us excited. And he spoke to that. He said, we also fully understand the importance of PS5 exclusive titles. As I mentioned earlier, PlayStation Studios' main responsibility is to have people enjoy the game experience using the latest PlayStation. We are increasing the number of PS5 exclusive titles and staggering the release of the PC version. I often have the opportunity to ask game fans for their opinions, and when I ask them about the timeline, do you think he's just at the bar asking people? He's never asked me. They say that selling the PC... Yeah, what the hell? Come on, call me up, Jim.
You grew up with Giant Bomb. How does he not come to you?
I don't get it. I don't get it at all. Those gamers say that selling the PC version 2 or 3 years after the release of the PlayStation version is accepted favorably. There's always this talk among PlayStation fans that I hear of, a little bit of concern that window is going to keep shrinking, and then maybe one day it's going to be 0 day. And I don't know why you really get concerned about that, but there is a concern that they'll be on PC and PlayStation day one. I think he's holding this line, and I think he's probably telling the truth here, that they're going to keep staggering these releases, at least through this entire generation. Do you think that's going to change?
No, I wholeheartedly agree with you. It doesn't make any business sense. I get, you get those initial PC sales, but they're still going to get them eventually, and you want people to buy PlayStations. Like, why would you not? I know PlayStation 5 is destroying Xbox in terms of sales this generation, and they recently admitted that. Microsoft admitted that recently, if I recall.
Yep.
But you still want it to continue to be the case, and this is how it's the case. So, I don't think they'll ever close that gap. That doesn't make any business sense to me, in my opinion.
I agree. All right, let's move on to the next story. Thank you, Jim Ryan, for your service. All right, next, 3 more Super Mario Advance games are coming to Nintendo Switch Online. This comes from Tom the Machine Ivan at VGC. Nintendo is bringing the remaining Super Mario Advance games to Nintendo Switch Online on May 26. Super Mario Advance, Super Mario World, Super Mario Advance 2, and Yoshi's Island, Super Mario Advance 3, will be available next week for players with Nintendo Switch Online plus expansion pack. They'll join Super Mario Advance 4, Super Mario Brothers 3, which was released in February when Nintendo launched its Game Boy library for Switch Online. Dave, I love the insane naming convention of the Mario Advance series. It's just bonkers.
So stupid.
Yes, it's
so stupid.
No regard for human life when they named these games, and I love that. I also think that these games are weird. The definitely Super Mario Advance, Yoshi's Island, and then Super Mario World are pretty not great because they're so zoomed in, and you don't get as much of a view as you would get with the Super Nintendo versions. But I do like this version of Super Mario Brothers 2, even though I think they have voice samples in it, then it's like kind of annoying. But like Luigi does a cool backflip and stuff when he jumps now. It's weird. It's like an enhanced version of the Super Mario All-Stars versions. I kind of like having these, even though I probably won't play them all that much. And even if I do, I'm probably not going to play them all the way through. How do you feel about these games?
You know, I was set to completely make fun of this until you mentioned Super Mario Advance 1 being different with Super Mario 2. And I totally forgot that they added the Yoshi's coins in Super Mario Advance 1. So they gave you that extra thing to do.
Yep.
I'm trying to remember if they did that for the other Advance games.
I don't remember. I don't think so. Right? My gut reaction is no. Like, for some reason, Super Mario Advance 1 got a little bit more. Maybe that's just like coming off of Super Mario Brothers Deluxe for the Game Boy Color with Super Mario Brothers, where they did a lot of extra stuff for that. Maybe they were carrying that forward, and they're like, by the time they got to the next one after that, they're like, no one cares about that. Just port the games to the Game Boy, whatever.
Yeah, Super Mario Brothers Deluxe was fantastic. I remember that. That was such a good port. But yeah, I was gonna make fun of this because I was like, well, we already have all these games already because we have Super Mario World on the Super Nintendo on the Switch, and
we have Super Mario All Stars, so we even got like the weird versions of all these games, or the updated versions, I guess, the remasters.
Yeah, so I was gonna make fun of it, but when you brought, it's like, okay, we already have them, but you're right with Super Mario Advance 1. That is genuinely a better port. And as we were talking about, I can't remember with Advance 2 through 4 if they did anything interesting.
Me neither. I'll check them out. I'll check it out.
I played them all, but yeah, I just don't remember at this point. I wonder if chat remembers that. Who knows? I guess we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see if anyone hits us. It doesn't seem like everyone's like, yeah, God, I don't remember. We all played these. I definitely, of course, I got them because I have my Game Boy Advance and got, I had the SP. Let's get these Mario. I love these Mario games. Let's play them again. And so they were slightly updated. One thing I learned recently is all these games came with Mario Brothers, the arcade running around thing. And it doesn't matter which game you have, as long as you have Mario Brothers on the game cartridge, it would speak to the other games, so you could all play Mario Brothers like 2-player with the link cable and stuff like that, and it would have just functioned correctly. I'm like, that's why they put it on every cartridge. Well, that and because they're lazy and they like to just add special features to that's the same thing to every game. But it was a cool idea still. I like it.
Yeah, that's very cool. Outside of the fact that I'm not a big fan of Mario Brothers, but it's still cool. I'm glad they did it. I don't know. Maybe I just haven't had a good competitor. Maybe my brothers and I that was the only person I ever played it with, the original Mario Brothers. And I don't know. It wasn't the best multiplayer game to me, but it led to Super Mario Brothers. So there you go.
Yeah, I think I've gotten more appreciation for Mario Brothers recently. Just like, I don't know, messing around. I think me and Mike played it somewhere and we're like, okay. But it's not ever going to be like if I had a chance to like get the arcade Mario Brothers and buy it from us, like, no, I'm good. Now, if I had the Nintendo Play Choice 10 or whatever it's called, I would get that for sure. All right, next story. Sony CEO saw the Super Mario Brothers movie, says Mario is a beautiful and wonderful IP. This comes from Nintendo Everything. Sony CEO Kenichiro Yoshida is apparently a big fan of Mario to the point where he actually went to see the Super Mario Brothers movie recently. Yoshida has also said that Mario Brothers is a beautiful and wonderful IP. Back in the day, or specifically 30 years ago. What's that?
I said, what is he, Trump? It's the most beautiful game.
It's a big, beautiful IP. He played the franchise intensely 30 years ago, Yoshida said. And then he went on to say it's a lovable IP a lovable IP can survive 30, 50, or 100 years. That is something we would like to make an investment into for sustainable growth. I brought the story in because this is kind of another fluff thing, right? But I brought the story in because I was thinking about it last night, that when you think about these companies and then the IPs that they are like actively working on right now, there are not many for Sony that come from the original PlayStation, and even to a certain extent PlayStation 2. I think for the PS1, if you could think of something that's not Gran Turismo, that is an ongoing PlayStation game series, I couldn't think of anything. All I could get was Gran Turismo. Can you think of anything?
I think all of them are dead now. Crash Bandicoot
Is
dead.
It's a Microsoft thing. Microsoft is
Right,
going to
I
own
mean,
Crash
yeah,
Bandicoot. Yeah.
If Microsoft
Twisted
could be-
Metal.
I mean,
Twisted Metal. There we go. Chat says Twisted Metal.
Okay.
That's
Twisted Metal.
That's probably going to get a new game. That's right. But they're doing that because they got a TV show. But no, we'll count it. The Twisted Metal. That's good.
Yeah, I'm glad. Twisted Metal. I mean, Jet Moto. Those kept on going.
Yeah, I wish.
It's amazing because there were so many. But Metal Gear Solid? No, that became multi-platform. I take it back.
Yeah, it's like, that was always Konami, and I think those we can count like that and like Final Fantasy and some of these third-party things that were greatly associated with the PlayStation. But in terms of like Sony and
Konami,
yeah, but like Sony
I mean,
investing in them, that's what he's
Bandicoot.
talking about. Like, let's invest in this stuff. They haven't, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because I get that was Konami. I mean, Crash Bandicoot was Naughty Dog, so I mean, like,
Right.
yeah. Is there any first-party stuff?
Yeah,
Astro's Playroom. That's it. That's
yeah.
the one.
The
Astro's
demake is on.
Playroom.
Yeah, it's in the BIOS. You have to do a special input to play it.
Yeah.
But
That's a great point. There isn't a single PlayStation 1 property.
and
I
they
don't
had a
think,
lot of games. I mean, you had the Parappa, says earlier in chat, but like Colony
you just, like,
Wars.
wanna run over. I mean, like, yeah, right. All of them either become multi-platform or they died. Like, yeah, Parappa, Resident Evil's multi-platform. Rayman was multi-platform.
Okay, so then let me ask you this then. What is the PlayStation Sony Interactive Entertainment IP, the PlayStation 1 IP, that is most likely to make a return? And why is it Siphon Filter?
Yes, that's the one. Wait, give me you monologue. I'm
Okay,
gonna look
yeah.
at my PlayStation little
I'm
catalog
like
right
on
now.
this Siphon Filter tip, everybody, because they keep releasing every version of Siphon Filter from PSP to PlayStation on PlayStation Plus services. So like they're trying to tell us something, and I think what they're trying to tell us is we have a lot of Siphon Filter games, so who gives a shit? But maybe Gabe Logan's coming back. Everybody, watch your asses. Jumping. I would love for Jumping Flash to come back too. All right, what do you got for me?
I got the property.
Okay,
I got
here
it
it is.
right here.
That's a big reveal.
Ninja Shadow of the Darkness.
Let's go. Let's fucking go. I would love it.
The other ones that I like, I mean, like pretty much all my catalogs like Square stuff. I mean, Monster Rancher. That might be an interesting
I
kid
think
property.
that'd be
bring
cool.
back.
Like you just connect it to your Spotify and stuff. Have the songs to
Yeah.
create the monsters.
Let's bring back Xenogears. It's dark anime movie. Air gaze.
Let's kill God. We don't do that anymore.
I mean, like, I'd love to see some stuff back. I'd love to see Parappa the Rapper back.
I would too.
honestly, like that would kick ass. But I mean, everything I loved is now multi-platform. It's like I loved Final Fantasy multi-platform. I loved
Yeah.
I love Castlevania Symphony of the Night. I mean, everything Konami does is dead now. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's,
I mean,
I don't know,
actually,
man.
this showcase some of those Konami things might be coming back, and they might be coming back in a big way because of PlayStation sort of investing in that. So maybe that is how they're viewing this. Let's like step back though, because I think maybe nostalgia is blinding me a little bit. Like, why wouldn't they just keep doing that? Obviously, that's something you do. Now, their strategy has been, let's take these very talented developers that have made things successful on the PlayStation 2, the PlayStation 3, and sort of urge them to make something new that could be even bigger. And they've done that repeatedly. Naughty Dog's games now are bigger than ever, and they don't make the stuff that they made on the PS2, PS3, even like, because they're not even making Uncharted games anymore. They're moving on to Last of Us now. And I think like Insomniac worked on a whole bunch of stuff, and now they're making Spider-Man, and Spider-Man's bigger than anything they made before, and Ghost of Tsushima bigger than anything Sucker Punch worked on before. So as much as like when they try to compare themselves to Mario, and it's like that's an IP that can last for 100 years, they're absolutely right, and it's grown over time and only gotten bigger. Maybe that's a hard thing to do, and the Sony strategy of sort of having the courage to try something new is actually right for Sony. Do you think? Is there anything to that?
I think you're right. I mean, all the stuff that we're talking about that we're nostalgic for aren't even Sony IPs. And yeah, to that, I feel like also for something to be Mario, it has to be a game that's made for everybody, that's made for kids. And Sony was at the time was like, nah, we're the big boys.
Absolutely.
We're not making stuff for kids anymore. And
2D games can go fuck themselves. We only make 3D games. Like that's very much what they were thinking at the time. So I think you're right. Like they weren't like planting those seeds. They were planting a whole other idea of you're going to get the cutting edge stuff. And I think that's been a strategy that's worked for them this entire time.
Absolutely. I mean, like they're doing fine. It's just having that type of IP. I mean, if I were to say anything to what you were talking about with Sony investing in Konami properties, I mean, maybe that is their best chance at the moment, other than making something totally new. Is like if they could somehow purchase the rights to Castlevania, that's still completely beloved by people, or Metal Gear Solid. I mean, you have these franchises that people grew up with, that people still like the new ones, typically. That maybe they could do something and bring that back. I mean, the Castlevania anime was super popular too. So I feel like Castlevania has staying power.
I agree.
So that maybe that's the other play. It's like you purchase one of those IPs from Konami and then you make it good. So I guess that's one idea. Or as you said, I like your idea though. I like that. That's not bad that they're trying new IPs and new things. Yeah. As much as I love Nintendo, I would love to see Nintendo try more new IPs.
Yep. And they have been better in fits and spurts, right? Where it's like, oh, ARMS and Pikmin. Pikmin was like 20 years ago now. So yeah.
Splatoon. That's more recent. Splatoon.
Splatoon is within the last decade. Now it's getting pretty close to being almost a decade old here, not too long, but yeah, still like the last decade for Nintendo, that's pretty good actually.
It seems like they try one new IP per console generation. Now that I think about it, Pikmin was GameCube.
Yep.
Then Splatoon was Nintendo Wii U, and then for the Switch it was ARMS.
Yep. Yeah.
What was the Nintendo Wii one? I don't know.
There was a handful. Wii Music. There you go.
Yes, everyone's favorite game.
Everyone loves Wii Music. The kids won't stop talking about Wii Music, Dave. That's the big thing. That's a big problem in my house. These kids are always just, hey, get me Wii Music. I'm like, all the stars are here. All right, let's move on to this next story. That kind of answers a question somewhat that I've had about how sports games works. Let's get into it. EA Sports College Football will compensate players that appear in the game.
Oh.
This comes from James Batchelor at gamesindustry.biz. Electronic Arts has confirmed that it will be compensating any college football players that feature in its future college football games. An EA Sports representative told ESPN that all football bowl subdivision players can opt in to have their names and likenesses in the upcoming EA Sports College Football and will receive payment. It is unclear how much athletes will be paid, as the details are still being finalized. The EA Sports representative said the publisher aims to be as inclusive and equitable as possible. Historically, college athletes have not been allowed to take payment for the use of their name, image, or likeness rights, meaning all players who starred in EA's previous college football series, which was last released in 2013, were unpaid, although EA was getting around that by not really using their name, image, and likeness. It was kind of like skirting around it by maybe using their number, but it was always kind of weird. However, a new law passed in California in 2019 that addresses this, and the NCAA reversed its long-standing opposition to college players being compensated. EA told ESPN that it is working with athlete marketing and sponsorship team One Team Partners to facilitate collegiate athletes' names and likenesses into the game. Some players will have their faces scanned into the game, although this will not be available to all, as there are thousands of players in the FBS across the United States. This is they're working with all the schools. They said they have more than 120 FBS schools, as well as all 10 football series conferences. And the college football playoffs have been committed to being in the game. I always wonder about this, Dave, because it's the kind of thing where like there's hundreds of players in the Major League Baseball, or thousands to a certain point when you start bringing in minor league players. And I asked about this, and I think people are like, a lot of that stuff is built into the contracts that a lot of these players sign when they sign with teams. And so they're technically already being paid for their name, image, and likeness. And then when it gets licensed to something else like a video game, that's already included in their contract. So that makes sense for pro players. College football players do not have contracts. So what happens with them? Well, now EA is going to have to go out and individually get them. But they're working. There's a lot of these firms that have popped up since this NIL stuff has come into law. And it sounds like they're working with one of those teams that's going to facilitate that. But I don't know, kind of cool. It's probably not going to be a huge sum of money. And when they say equitable, I think that means we're probably going to pay the top, the biggest players less to be equitable with like what we're paying everyone else. And maybe that's a way of getting around having to pay the big money. But I think a lot of those big players will just stop and say, actually, no, you have to pay me. So I don't know. This seems like a pretty good thing, right?
I think it's great. I think it's great. I mean, I'd hate to be the accountant on this, but
yes.
It's like, I imagine to what you said, most players will probably get like $5 at the end of the day, something like that. Because
apparently someone's saying around 500 is what they've read. That to me, $500 sounds right. Where it's like, okay, I guess.
I mean, Yeah, it's better than nothing, though.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad that they're getting something, but I mean, to your point, it's just when you have hundreds of people, and also like, yes, you're using their likeness, but none of them actually worked on the game. It's not like they, in my opinion, they don't deserve that like $100,000 salary that someone's
Sure.
getting from making the game. But they still deserve something. So
Yeah, and it's like
I'm glad
500
they're getting
seems
something.
low, but it also is like it's the number that, like, if I were to like working at EA and I had to pick a number that I thought was probably high enough to get most players, I would probably say 500. Yeah, it's weird.
I mean, it's also like, what are you gonna? You don't know how well the game is going to sell. It's a college football game or college game, and those, I mean, those aren't going to sell as well as pro games.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, unless you could like make it so, and I guess they're doing a one-time payment. It sounds like you're saying, unless you could do it where you give them like a small portion of every sale. I look, I don't know what's fair. I'm just,
Right.
but I am glad they're getting compensated. It's
And
definitely a step in the right direction.
And the truth is, like, for the players that will be able to command more money because they are crucial to like, players like, I had that 5-star recruit that I've been begging for my school to actually get signed. That's a big part of following college football, and those names matter. And those names will probably be able to get more money. It is $500 for the offensive lineman that no one really knows the name of. They're not going to be able to command anything really on the open market, so getting $500 seems kind of nice. And it's like, maybe, hopefully that stuff is piling up where they're getting a lot of name, image, and likeness deals, and they can actually do that. But it's like, it is better than nothing. And these schools continue to not pay these athletes, even though they continue to generate millions of dollars for them. So I guess anyone coming around and paying them is something. But this is
that's so ridiculous.
And you mentioned the schemes like I saw goes good to the pro game. I think in the long run that's probably true. But this next one that comes out, since it has been so long, is probably going to sell like crazy. I bet the first NCAA football game out of the gate since 2013, it probably is going to be right there with Madden, if not more so.
Look, I'm just jaded because I went to Indiana University and our football team was absolutely horrendous.
Yes, trash. So, absolutely.
So, I mean, like, I didn't have anyone to get behind. So I'm totally jaded from it.
Hey, let's see. We got the basketball team. You're good over there.
I mean, look, putting myself in the shoes of a player for a moment, if I were an athlete and, coming from not getting anything and someone's like, hey, we're going to pay you a little bit of money, even though it's not a lot, to use your name, and then you're immortalized in a video game forever. I think I'd be pretty stoked personally, but that's just me. I'd be pretty excited that I'm getting some money and I get to be immortalized. But that's just me. I think it's pretty cool. I think it's a great step in the right direction, and I'll take that.
And you know what these players could always do, and no one could stop them. They could unionize, and the college player, player alliance would have a lot of sway and a lot of power to get them even more money. All right, let's see here. Let's move on to this next story. Big companies took E3 for granted, says Take-Two CEO. This comes from Alex Hopley at Game Reactor. Take-Two CEO Strauss Zelnick has criticized some of the larger gaming companies, stating that they didn't realize the importance of E3 and instead took it for granted. Speaking with GameIndustry.biz, Zelnick said, I think for a period of time, some of the large players in the business took E3 for granted and decided to step away from the show, but still be in the publicity business at the same time and in the same location. And I think that is problematic. I think you either have to support the show or there isn't going to be a show. Now, he didn't call out any of these companies by name, but we know the companies that left and then did stuff in the same place. Activision did stuff like that before. EA definitely did that stuff repeatedly over years, where they had EA Play right down the street from E3. And I think he's right for the most part here, where these companies were like, there will be something that attracts everyone to the same place. And now that there is no E3, there is question marks about whether Summer Game Fest is going to be able to do that. I will say, scheduling the couch for E3 for Giant Bomb, I've reached out to a lot of people who've been on Giant Bomb's stuff before, and many are coming. A lot are like, oh, I wasn't planning to go to Summer Game Fest. And it's like, E3 was a thing where even if you don't have a game to show off, but if you're in the business, you probably want to be there because conversations are going to happen that are going to be important. There is no reason to assume that kind of stuff is going to happen at Summer Game Fest. All the other stuff will happen, but all the the shadow E3, the background E3, that is like the real deal reason for that show to exist these days, or at least the last several years, ever since the buyers from Target or whatever we're like, oh yeah, whatever, we have algorithms that do that stuff now. those deals that were happening, that was the reason to have it. I think a lot of the industry is just like, oh, now we don't have anything to get together during the summer. We're gonna have to find other places to do that. I guess it's gonna be GDC, but I think Zelnick is mostly right. What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, to what you said a moment ago, the whole reason E3 initially existed, and same thing with why companies used to go to CES back in the day, was to try to get retailers to buy their games. It wasn't really about media relations or anything like that, or the audience. And then the E3 kind of morphed into both things at once. But I don't know. I feel like it makes sense for smaller developers, but I mean, you know, I don't know. Like, you have Nintendo Direct, and honestly, it does great. And they market indie games, and they market smaller games. They market the same stuff, and the numbers, everyone gets excited about Nintendo Direct. Same thing with the PlayStation events, like what's happening next week. I just don't know. I mean, like, I get your point about those like back negotiations happening, and that sort of stuff happening in the shadow E3, but at least from like a media standpoint, I don't see the relevance, honestly. And then you have events like PAX that exist where if you want to get it in the hands of people to play, PAX goes around, and there's 4 different locations of PAX. And same with other events. Like, I mean, we were just at DreamHack, and you know, there's other places that you can go to that are probably far cheaper if you want to get your game in the hands of people to get them excited. And then everyone's online now, so you can do your own announcements when you want. You don't have to rush out a trailer when you're not ready to show anything. So I don't know, but I'm also not the CEO of Take-Two, so
well, I
imagine he knows better than me.
No, I think you're in terms of like media coverage, you're spot on, and I think that is like part and parcel with what he's saying, where these companies took it for granted and made it kind of less important, and a lot of that was, as you said, creating assets for these things when you're not ready, and having to rush that stuff out of the door became more and more challenging. So fewer developers were actually willing to go through that, and that sort of naturally caused a pullback from E3. But yeah, in terms of making E3 matter, I'll say that, you know, it due to no fault of the media, like we tried to us, we didn't take it for granted. We showed up and we're like, there's a lot of stuff that we could do here that can be a lightning rod for attention that is going to be very valuable to us covering video games. And so we showed up every year, and we tried to make it matter. We tried to make it important. And, you know, I think that's a big part of still what we're trying to do now with the night shows and us going to Summer Game Fest is we're going to try to make this feel important. And I think these companies that had to invest a lot of money to meet us on the other side lost interest in it for a variety of reasons. And not that there's that they should feel like they have to do it, but I think it was definitely E3 was a mess. ESA was a mess. But it was definitely pushed over the cliff by these publishers sort of being like, I'm not interested in supporting that anymore.
Yeah, it's almost an impossible question to answer, really. You know, it's like, from one perspective, is it, you know, you get all that marketing out, basically. That's what it is. For them, it's a marketing opportunity now.
Yep.
But it's just one of those things where you really don't know. I mean, no one can tell the answer. It's sort of impossible to know if that investment's worth it or not. Even if you're a company looking at the numbers, you really don't know if you could have gotten that same hype from, say, a Nintendo Direct or Sony PlayStation event, or from going out there in person to E3. I don't know if there's a way to ever really know, unless you can go back in time, take your game out of that, and then do it in an alternate universe.
Yeah,
and say, like,
A/B test reality, something I would love to be able to do. There's a movie about that starring Nick Cage. I can't remember what it's called, and it's actually horrifying and terrible. He does some messed up stuff using that power. All right, I'm gonna skip ahead here. Star Wars Jedi Survivor topped European game sales in April. This comes from Tom the Machine Ivan at VGC. Despite not being released until April 28th, the game topped the monthly software sales charts ahead of fellow EA title FIFA 23, according to GSD data published on GamesIndustry.biz. The research firm's data covers physical software sales from major European markets and digital sales from most leading publishers. Star Wars Jedi Survivor's launch month sales were up nearly 6% on those of Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, which was actually released in the middle of November 2019. The action-adventure game was also the best-selling title in the United States in April. Market firm Circana, which is once the NPD Group, reported earlier this week. Dead Island 2, which charted at number 2 in the US last month, came in at number 3 in Europe, selling about a third fewer copies than Resident Evil 4 Remake managed when it was released in March. I think that's pretty good for Dead Island 2, right?
Yeah. I would have never expected that. I thought Dead Island was a dead franchise.
Yep.
No pun intended. I
agree.
I know everyone's reaction was shocked by how good it was. I mean, everyone was expecting it to be pretty bad, and it was actually a decent game. So, good on them. Good on them. That's great.
Yeah, it's a competently made game, and that was real nice to experience after such a long development cycle for that game. While 7 of April's 15 best-selling games were new releases in the U.S., the only other new entry to make the top 20 chart in Europe's last month was Minecraft Legends at number 19. In total, 10.4 million consoles and PC games were sold across Europe in April, which was down 5.3% year over year. On the hardware front, which doesn't include data from Germany or the UK, console sales in Europe in April were up almost 58% year over year. PS5 jumped to 144% compared to last April. Nintendo Switch sales were up 38% year over year, and Xbox Series X and S sales rose by over 19% year over year, although they were all down from March. I think that's not too surprising for Star Wars Jedi Survivor, although, outselling FIFA with just a couple of days now. I think that FIFA is relatively older, but still, it's still pretty good for that series. I think the telltale sign for Survivor is going to be its legs, something that Hogwarts Legacy has really had. If Survivor can have anything similar to that, it's going to be a very, very high-selling game.
Yeah, I don't know if it will, though. I mean,
I think it's a question.
Yeah, I don't think it will.
What do you base that on? What do you think it is? Is it just that it's Hogwarts Legacy was a special case, or there's something about Survivor specifically?
I think it's that Legacy was a special case. I just think it was that, because Star Wars Jedi Survivor, I think, especially since it's a sequel, most people who were interested in the game because of the first one probably already bought it. Probably. I mean, there's going to be people who couldn't afford it or were waiting for whatever reason or for anything. But and then at the same time, Star Wars has, in history, it's had a plethora of good games. It's also had a plethora of bad games, but it's not like this is like a standout compared to Hogwarts Legacy, where it's pretty much the first genuinely good Harry Potter game. So I think that's like the difference there, and part of why Hogwarts Legacy has had such strong legs. But yeah, I mean, that's nothing bad to say about Jedi Survivor. I feel like the audience who wanted it has probably purchased it early on, and it's not going to have as big of a tail, I should say, in my opinion. That would be what my thoughts on it. I
think you laid it out exactly how I see it as well. I think Survivor's going to have pretty good word of mouth. The trouble for that, I mean, other than not being this special case where, like, Hogwarts Legacy delivered the thing that those fans have always said they wanted, just to live in that world. And it's like, okay, This game seems to accomplish that. There have been a lot of Star Wars games, and so Survivor's not going to have that buzz. And I think you're right about that. Also, that positive word of mouth for Survivor, which was picking up even from the really good reviews, it continued to pick up where people were like, as I play more of this game, I'm loving it even more. And I think that would have had a really strong effect. Tears of the Kingdom just swallowed up all of the oxygen out of the room. And now no one has any space to talk about Survivor anymore. And I was like, okay, EA released it when it released it. They're going to have to live with that. For some reason, they always do that to Respawn games, though, don't they?
I know, they do. That was going to be my exact next point, was Tears of the Kingdom, by the way. 100% agree with you. But yeah, they just love screwing over Respawn. I mean, especially Titanfall. They hate Titanfall for some reason. They just hate that franchise.
They really do. They absolutely do.
But yeah.
All right. Japan physical sales from May 8th through May 14th. This comes from Sal Romano at Gematsu. Famitsu has published its estimated physical game software and hardware sales data for Japan for the week of May 8th through May 25th. That's not May 14th. The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom for Switch was the highest selling new release, opening at 1,119,502 copies at retail. So that's just physical. But Nintendo actually told us that in Japan they sold 2.4 million copies of Zelda in Japan. So that means about 50% is digital and 50% is physical, which is pretty impressive, because a lot of times Nintendo games have something closer to like 40-60, where 60 is physical. So a lot of digital copies of this sold. On the hardware side, the Switch family sold 83,000 units. The PlayStation 5 family sold 41,000 units. The PlayStation 4 family, 787 units. And the Xbox Series family, just 275 units. But that's Japan.
That's rough.
It's very rough. They've had pretty good months before. That is a very bad month, or a very bad week,
Yeah.
excuse me.
Oh man.
The Switch at 83,000 units, though, is actually down from last week when the Switch OLED Zelda version launched, which was like a 90,000 something like unit. But
Yeah.
it does seem like most people who are going to get the new hardware picked up last week, and it's carrying forward some of that momentum as the game comes out. But for the most part, people are just probably playing on the hardware they already have. Still, though, Switch selling very well, obviously, alongside this game. 1.1.
It's insane when you consider the Switch is already like the third highest selling console of all time, just behind the Nintendo DS and PlayStation 2. So it's insane that it's still even selling that number to me.
Yep, it's really. I think this is evidence that the 15 million number that they set for this fiscal year for the Switch, after doing about 18 million last year, this game is going to help them get there. I think. I think that this game has the juice to, and along with that Zelda OLED, sort of push them very quickly towards that number, and they'll probably limp towards it near the end of the fiscal year, but they'll probably get there. And that puts them very close to being the number one fastest selling system of all time, although not quite there. All right. In terms of the other games that were sold, I have this list here, Dave, and we had that interview from Jim Ryan earlier, and he talked about how important Japan was. One of the things that interviewer mentioned is that the hardware for PS5 seems to be selling pretty well in Japan, but when it comes to software, it's not represented in like the sales charts, and software just doesn't sell as well. And if you look at this chart, they give us 30 games from the last week, and 2 are PlayStation. 3. Yes, you're right. 3. Let's see.
Yeah, because there's one PS5 game and 2 PS4 games.
Yeah, and
two PS5, whatever.
And the PS4, one of the PS4 game is Hogwarts Legacy, and that's for PS4 and PS5, and they're both on the chart here.
And then Resident Evil 4 for PS4 is also on here.
Yeah. It's I think that also sounds about right. I think there is a dedicated PlayStation audience in Japan. I do think it's obviously smaller than the Nintendo audience in Japan. That's just the way it is. And I think this is not necessarily a chicken and egg. I think this is just the reason why Sony doesn't invest as much in Japan. And maybe if they invested more, they would be more higher on this list, but I don't necessarily think that's a guarantee either.
You know, I was doing a research on a video for GameSpot, how the Nintendo Switch saved Nintendo, which is coming out in a couple weeks.
Ooh.
And one of the interesting things that they talked about was how Nintendo's always been concerned with gamer drift in Japan, which is that gamers just aren't as interested in hardware in Japan. They really moved to the mobile market. And I think that just shows how important the idea of the Switch was to selling to a Japanese market. And they very specifically made the Switch because in Western countries, TV gameplay tends to do better.
Yep.
And in the Japanese market, mobile gameplay does better. So that's why they made the Switch the way they made it, was so it could be both and hit both markets. And it seemed like, just looking at this chart, they were 100% right.
Yep. I think you're right.
Japanese market.
Steely Dan in chat says Tokyo Gamer Drift, which thank you very much. Well said.
Hell yeah.
All right. I have the poll from yesterday. Let's go ahead and bring that up, in which we talked about, will we be playing GTA 6 next year? I actually ended up posting this morning, so you missed it, everybody. Too late. You can't vote anymore. 60.6% said no. 39.4% said yes. I think next year is a bit too early. I think early 2025 is what I would say. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, I'd agree. Also, honestly, I hope so.
That'd be great.
I mean,
yeah.
I hope that they actually take that extra time. I wouldn't mind that. So yeah, I hope it is 2025. So.
Yeah. All right. I am going to get the new poll question written up for Monday. In the meantime, Dave, why don't you tell people where they can find you, what you have going on, plug all the stuff right now. Feel free. Go ham.
Sure. Hey, my name's Dave. On YouTube, I'm Dave Control, but nowadays I just make content for GameSpot. So if you go to GameSpot, I'm doing a series for them that's weekly called How It Saved. I just put out a video how Sonic saves Sega. This Sunday is going to be how Twilight Princess saved the Zelda franchise, which is actually a pretty interesting story. Basically, a lot of just how Wind Waker did really poor for them, which, you know, I think Zelda was always going to do good, but it's just still a very interesting story. And then after that, as I mentioned, Nintendo Switch. And yeah, I've been working on a game. That's all I do in my free time now is programming a game with my partner who's an artist. So we've been making a game together. I've been working on this specific game for 6 months now, and we started working together a year ago. So I don't have much to say about it yet. It's not ready to really announce anything, but I don't know. I just want to say it because I'm excited. It's like I love making it. It's very fun. It's definitely. I majored in game design and computer science, so it's fun to go back to my roots in that sense.
I think that's very cool. When you try to learn a new skill when you're making a game, what is your go-to? Do you go to YouTube?
Udemy and YouTube, but Udemy has been
really
amazing.
Okay, I've always been curious about hearing positive stories from Udemy. Okay, so that's interesting. That's because I'm like in the mood to learn some new stuff, and I think that might be a good place to just kind of start messing around with making a game. I think that'd be pretty neat. Okay, very cool.
Game Dev TVs, who I've been watching a lot of for Unity tutorial. I've specifically been learning Unity for Unity tutorials. They're really good. And then there's another YouTuber, and I'm forgetting his name, so I apologize to him. But he made a great video on 2D platform games, which is what I'm making. That really broke down things like various design patterns that you use, like the state pattern system and things like that, in a way that was really understandable for me, being extremely rusty with this stuff. And it helped me so much that I recoded the entire game from scratch after watching that tutorial. So, or I should say lecture. But yeah, there's YouTube. There's really great YouTube stuff. But honestly, Udemy's been incredible. So yeah, I highly recommend it if you want to go into that.
I fucked up the poll question, everybody. I get it. I'm fixing it right now. I'm so sorry. I'm fixing it right now. All right.
How dare you?
I know.
What's the new question?
It's okay. So the new poll question is: will there be more or less than 3.5 PSVR 2 games at the PlayStation Showcase? That's your over/under. And I said, what did I do? More, 3 or fewer, less, 4 or more. Listen, I'm a very stupid person, everybody, and you got to keep that in mind when you're dealing with me. All right, stand back. Let me cook.
I'm rooting for exactly 3. That's going to be my guess.
All right, hell yeah. All right, 4 or more. There we go. Less, 3 or fewer. Okay, there we go. You guys can vote for real now. And I'm going to.
By the way, something I want to mention about Udemy. I feel like I'm a shill for them right now, but like, as I mentioned, I double majored in game design and computer science. I feel like I've been learning better than my 4-year degree just from 1 year of doing Udemy courses.
Yeah, I mean, I think that do the Udemy courses have like a lot of like sort of projects that you do to figure stuff out? Is that kind of how they do it, or is it just all the information is well presented or something like that?
I mean, it depends on who the person is that you're doing the course from. So some are better than worse. I mean, that's why, they're all rated with star ratings.
Oh, okay.
So cool. Like the game dev course does it where they give you a challenge with every single lecture where it's like, okay, we're going to pause the video and try to do this challenge. And they lay out what they want you to do. And I mean, you don't have to, but it's a good idea to. And then afterwards, they show you how they did it. So you could just keep on playing. I mean, when something's too confusing for me, I just keep on playing. I'm like, whatever, explain it to me. But I think it's more just the case of that when you go to school, you don't necessarily know if your professors are going to be good or not, or if they're just there because they got a research grant or that sort of thing. Whereas with Udemy, you have like the ones who are highly rated are good at explaining things and they're good at showing it. So it's like they're actually good at teaching it. So I think it's more of that, and probably just the fact that like I'm so interested in what I'm doing, it's easier to learn it. It's like I took Spanish from 7th grade through freshman year of college, and I can barely speak Spanish. I took 1 year of Japanese, and I'm far more fluent in Japanese than Spanish. And it's just because I was that much more interested in learning Japanese.
Yeah, so, that's obviously that's the difference, isn't it? Yeah.
So I mean, there could be that sort of bias coming into play from me too. To be fair,
but still, I don't think you're wrong generally on that take. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We'll have more on Giant Bomb. We're on Monday. We'll get to the answering that poll question. Today we're gonna have UPF. We're probably gonna play some games. I got a whole bunch of stuff that I want to check in on. A lot of stuff that it's still a bit too early to play, but there's a handful of things we can check in on. So we'll make that happen on UPF. In the meantime, I want to say Dave Control, thank you so much for speaking with me today about video games. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. It was an absolute pleasure. I hope I had some insight.
It was beautiful. It was awesome.
Again, thank you so much for having me. It was a ton of fun.
In the words of the CEO of Sony, it was wonderful. and beautiful, and I appreciate it. You're the best audience of gaming, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, have a good one. Take care of yourself, and goodbye.
Later.
Okay, we are. Let me get to over here. There we go. All right, still hot mic'd, but we are going to raid now because it's Friday and we got other stuff.